I already fucked that up. Let me try it
You're
again.
listening to Alternating with Eric,
Let me
episode
have
40.
a
Do you remember
go.
which episode this is?
Fuck. What episode was this?
I will look that up.
know
Meanwhile,
either.
practice your intro while I look this up.
Oh,
You got plenty of time.
hello, everyone, and welcome to Alternating with Erik, episode 42. I'm Erik, and I'm here with my friend Connor.
Hey.
Yep, he sounds so enthusiastic.
Yep.
Although I'm not sure why, considering the topic we're going to have today.
What do you mean? It's a very positive topic, Eric.
It is a positive topic. You just didn't
You lived
sound...
through it.
I'm not going to say you're wrong, but...
I did pick this topic because I knew Eric would have personal experience, and we won't get political, but we will Eric can get personal if he wants here, because this topic affects him more than it did me, obviously. Because Eric, what are we talking about today?
So our topic for today is discussing why Animal Farm is special.
All right.
Animal Farm is a novel written by George Orwell, way back in the 19-somethings. I forgot
And
what date it was.
We'll talk about it when we get into the subject. But the reason we
Indeed.
picked this is because Eric is a Russian martial artist.
Sure, let's go with that.
Yeah. And I believe you have a bit of a degree in, why don't you tell people you have a degree in...
History and politics.
History and politics. So this is your bread and butter.
I don't know why I keep saying that.
And I'm Connor. I'm a musician, sound engineer, that sort of thing.
I think I just got a little overexcited.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. You're always a bit excited. So, since you're so excited, Eric, why don't you tell us about your week?
My week? Oh, it's been,
What have you been up to?
busy. Oh, what have I been up to? It's been a busy week, mostly working and training. But where I wasn't doing either one, I had a chance to have a sit down and play a few games, including one continuing to play Magic the Gathering with Chung, because frankly, we're still trying to butt heads with each other over which of our decks is better. And obviously, not to get into too much of this, he thinks his deck, which pumps him full of life, is better than mine, which burns everything to the ground.
I have to address something about Chung. Because he messaged me because we'll get a little bit into why I wasn't on, because we were going to do a Let's Play for our Snatcher thing. We're going to continue that. We couldn't do it because I had something on. I'll get into that. But Chung messaged me to ask about why there was a Magic Let's Play this week and why there was an episode before that. And he thought that maybe there was going to be a Magic podcast now. And I was like, no, Chung. You're just filling in for me twice. So, Chung, if you're listening, you were just filling in for me twice, and you obviously know why. I wasn't on those episodes. But we'll get into that. But Eric, you keep telling us what your week's been like.
And I've also managed to watch several episodes of another anime called Horimiya. You heard of that one?
No, I never heard of it.
It's a really good
It's not an Italian opera song, is it? Because it sounds like an Italian.
No,
opera
it's a bit of a slapstick comedy or romance comedy anime.
Okay.
About two teens just literally falling in love, and it's such a nice anime to look at and watch. I'd recommend it to you.
Is it funny at least?
It is funny.
Okay.
There's no no ecchi, aka sexual humor in it.
Okay.
There's a little bit, but that's only, something, it's to a degree where you'd share it with friends rather than intentionally try and over-sexualize something like they do in some animes.
Yeah.
I'd name one with a sarcastic cough, but too many are running through my head right now. And yeah, and just having a watch of it, it's rather nice and does touch a little bit quite well on the relationship between people, as well as kind of touching on two people who are vastly different behind closed doors. It's just one of those aspects where you hang out with people, you think you know them well, but quite clearly you haven't seen what they're like when as soon as their bedroom door closes and then they bring out their weird little fetish or
I mean, you should see Eric off the podcast.
hey, let's not discuss my arson interests, please.
I thought we were talking about your cannibalism, but
Ew, no, that's you. Just kidding.
I only eat brains, Eric. Nothing else.
Oh God, didn't tell me you were a zombie.
Not a zombie. I'm a vampire.
But anyway,
That also likes brains.
But anyway, I'd recommend that to you because I think you'd enjoy it.
Okay.
And it's really casual, so literally you don't have to go into it with any intensity. You can just, if you're having a lazy Sunday or any lazy day, you just gotta. It's a good anime to watch that. Sit back and just enjoy. Other than that, I've just been browsing through multiple mangas, just trying to see what's new and what's come up.
Anything you're watching that's not necessarily anime, that's just like,
Normie
shit.
Normie shit. Oh my God. Just been watching multitudes of creepypasta stories,
Okay.
which I actually do enjoy the creepypasta stories. Some of them might be quite long. The average time for a creepypasta I've seen on YouTube was somewhere between, as an audio, somewhere between 30 to 50 minutes. So that could take up,
You're not watching true crime stuff, are you?
not often,
Okay.
but I do look at the more cold case files there. But the creepypasta stories, my God, they are literally putting the creep factor on them because I've been reading through one recently which reflected a young child, this guy whose father died recently, and he finds out his father was an observer of the multiverse. And as it turns out, his father was trying to figure out a way to prevent some of the things that have happened in these multiverses happening to their world. And some of the things...
wait, this is a true crime thing.
No, it's not a true crime thing.
Creepypasta thing.
Yeah, pretty much. A creepypasta thing. And I've just... And just kind of reading through it, I haven't finished that yet, but reading through that, it's crazy how well written some of these ones are. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much been my week.
How's your martial arts?
How's my martial arts? As I've discussed earlier with Connor, just catching up on it as much as I can. I've been so lazy about it these past several months that I'm having to just read back through old syllabuses, notes, books, videos, and whatever I can just to make sure I've caught up with everything. And because the way we try and perform martial arts is less about the cool factor of it, of how it looks, but more the science behind it. Because people, people who aren't into it as much as we are, will throw a punch and say, "This is how you do it." Okay. That we throw the punch and tell you every aspect of it we can to make sure you do it properly, okay? How your shoulder should be positioned, how it should move, where your elbow is supposed to be, what you shouldn't do when you're actually bringing it out, positioning of your wrist, of your knuckles, of your hands, your fingers, like how much power and control you need to bring out at every fight, like how you should even do it. And that's just with your arm. We introduce so many other aspects to it. It's crazy, and I love it. But yeah, that's been my week. What about yours?
I'm laughing because I've been doing fake punches to Eric, like air punches, because Eric, every time I do a punch, is like, "No, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. More like this. Tilt your arm more like this."
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
With the martial arts.
I know. I would do the same thing if you started singing. I'd be like, "Eric, no, that key, not this key."
And
you see, you went up. Hey, you weirdly enough, you tried to do that as a joke, and you hit the first note right, and then you failed on the second note. Because if you you're like, you just like sort of trailed it. I was like, Eric actually hit the first note right, and then he sucked.
I can't tell. The only time I have a good musical ear is recognizing the notes to certain songs. So
weirdly enough, I feel like you'd be a good rhythm like instrument player, or when it comes to vocals, I feel like you could maybe rap. I can't rap for shit.
Oh, good Lord, no, I'm not gonna
really?
rap. No, I don't.
See, I feel like if I drag you to karaoke, you're gonna be doing Eminem, and I'm gonna be doing, my vocal stuff.
No.
I'll be doing Elvis or whatever.
No. I am a lover of heavy metal, so any heavy metal song I
Okay.
will sing.
Well,
Mostly
well,
because
you could
I
do
feel
Rob Zombie shit. That's like almost kind of rap
yeah.
mixed with like. I just think you're a good talker, so I think you'd probably have no problem with it.
Oh, but I think my voice cords are too harsh to perform any sort of um well-versed songs. So something like a heavy metal song might be better for me because of how harsh I sound with my voice box.
Yeah. I've heard Eric sing.
Oh God.
And I won't say anything. Well, because as some of you may know, me and Eric went to high school together, and you all have to stand in a line, and you have to sing the school theme song. And some people sing it really
mean-
well, and some
yeah,
people don't sing it very well.
It is basically a school theme song, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's nothing else about it.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, I can barely remember it, but I remember the Welsh one we did. You know, the when I tread the verge of Jordan, let thy ashes tears subside. Death of death and hell's destruction. I don't want no copyright song. It's like the city war.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
It's a fun song to sing, but the other one we had to sing was not that.
Remember when they got us to sing the Taylor Swift song?
No, I don't remember that.
Weren't you there?
I might have not been there.
Oh, they made us sing one of Taylor Swift's
I
songs.
wonder if you were there one of the few days I actually skipped school. There was like at least 2 or 3
Probably.
days I actually skipped.
Yeah, probably. But if you weren't there, you missed out on us singing Taylor Swift.
But my week. Well, geez, what have I been up to? So I'm still keeping up my walking. I'm actually maybe Eric didn't notice, but I'm actually in good shape for once, like really good shape. I did a really good hike recently up one of the hills near me, near Ara Valley.
Nice.
Went really, really up high. It was a lot of fun. And
Aravel, is that the one that goes past the botanical gardens? Or
no.
Okay.
Dude, you're in the wrong neck of the woods.
Okay.
You've been near my house. It's a little down that sort of way.
Oh yeah.
So there's a couple of walk paths. There's one that's for bikes, one that's not. I usually go on the one that's not, and you can go really far on that. And I went really far, really up high on that, and I was sweating, but I'm really glad I did it because I've lost quite a bit of weight, and I did the Mapuya walk as well this week. So
Okay.
so it was good too because I was visiting family up at Mapuya. So thought might as well do the walk up and down there, and I did it in these boots that I'm wearing, which was not easy, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, I gotta buy myself a pair of boots like that. Where'd you get yours from?
I think these were like $50 from the warehouse.
Oh, nice.
To translate, the warehouse is the Walmart of New Zealand.
Except
or the Don Quixote for our Japanese listeners.
Except unlike Walmart in America, warehouse does not have people wearing, walking around half naked, dragging crocodiles around.
You haven't worked at the warehouse then if you haven't seen someone in Crocs or like their pajamas or whatever walking around.
That's still not as bad.
Naked. I've seen people naked walk around the warehouse at least once.
My God, really?
Yeah, I worked there once for a little bit.
How have I not come across?
I saw a
this?
half-eaten potato once just hidden behind some toys.
Why?
Because it's just like a giant warehouse. Like
why would anyone have a half-eaten potato? That is just.
Some Irishman couldn't finish his lunch.
I don't think even an Irishman would leave a potato there.
Yeah. But Jesus, now I can't stop with the warehouse. I was trying to think of the UK equivalent for the warehouse, but I can't really think of it at the moment.
Basically, any shop you.
No, they do have like an equivalent, but I can't remember what it is at the moment. But yeah, you UK listeners, if you know what a Walmart is, you'll know what a fucking warehouse is. And it's kind of in the name, anyways. We're pretty lazy with our name scheme. We're not even like gonna come up with. We're just gonna call it the warehouse because it's literally just a warehouse of stuff that you can buy.
Wait, are you talking about the UK or New Zealand?
I'm just talking about New Zealand, like the name of the warehouse,
okay.
because like Walmart is like, I guess the name is in the title, but like Japan, at least with their version, Don Quixote, that doesn't say it's a supermarket. That's like a name of a character, and you just decided to, So
that's a pretty good appeal to be interested in, at least.
Yeah, their stuff isn't that cheap though, to be honest. You can
I don't know. I don't know.
You can go to the 100 yen store and get stuff way cheaper.
I mean the yen is, I mean, you can get quite a lot of yen
yeah.
for
our currency,
even New Zealand.
yes, but I just mean out of all the shops I went to, if you go to like 100 yen shop, you can actually get better stuff for cheaper there than at Don Quixote. But my week's basically been, I've done some hikes. I'm watching Alice in Borderland.
Nice.
Because my hairdresser recommended it. Funnily enough,
I watched the first one episode of it, like the first one, and my god.
Yeah, I read the manga because it's based off a manga. So I read the first 46 chapters of it, and now I'm
Don't spoil anything for me. I'm actually enjoying it.
and I'm watching the episodes, and yeah, it's really good. The thing that impressed me the most wasn't actually like the story or the characters or anything. It was actually the filmmaking, because since I've been to Japan now, I always look out for like, oh, I've been there, I've been around this place, or I haven't been to this place. They filmed they didn't film in Shibuya for that. So you've watched the first episode, eh?
Yeah.
You know they didn't film in Shibuya.
Yeah, I wouldn't think they did.
They filmed in another area and they green screened all the background around them.
Damn.
So they took an area that they took a street that had like a crossing like the Shibuya one, and then they just put green screens around it. And this is like in the middle of nowhere. Like this is some like small town in Japan.
Oh my god.
And they just converted it to the crossing. And I've been to that area and I couldn't tell the difference.
Wow.
I couldn't tell the difference. I couldn't tell it was CG until I went and looked it up.
Wow.
Because I was like, oh, they've got the Suyama, which is like they have like books and shit in there. It's like basically like a Wickles, or Borders. And they have that, and they have the world's largest Starbucks in there as well, like one of the most popular ones. Right across from the crossing, and then right across from that is the station. Literally the only thing. Oh, actually no. I was gonna say they didn't have a hub, but actually I'm not surprised they didn't have a hub, because I think the hub's on the other station way. Anyways, I was really impressed with what they did there, and the acting and the casting was pretty good. The CG wasn't like terrible as well, which is usually the thing, with like most Japanese stuff. Some of the like TVs, like the budget isn't always great, but the CG's been okay. One of the characters I know is gonna die from reading the manga, but I kind of don't want him to die because they did a really good job with him, and they gave him more depth in the TV show than what he had in the manga. Like he's just like kind of a charismatic character in the manga, but they actually added a bit more to him, and they gave him a bit more likability, and the actor is really likable as well. So I'm kind of gonna be sad when he goes, because I know they've been following the manga pretty closely, other than maybe changing a few things here and there.
Okay.
Like the first episode is a bit different from the manga. In the manga, it's a flaming arrow thing, and they're like at a temple. But instead, they did it in a room, which I thought was kind of better and made a bit more sense. So, yeah, did that. Watched the first episode of the new Shaman King TV show, because there's a new TV show out. I kind of want it in dub though. I kind of nostalgic for that 4Kids dub. It's one of the few 4Kids dubs I actually think is pretty good. It has some issues, but I still kind of like it. And I was watching the episode. I was like, oh, there's no Shaman King. Like, there's not that classic opening that I really like, and there's not the spirit form unity. There's like none of that stuff there. And yeah, I don't know. It's all right. I gave it a watch. What else? Oh. So the movie, it's Easter here, and of course I did what every person would do on Easter and watched a horror movie that had nothing to do with Easter, because I've been watching.
Unless it's the Monty Python, and the Holy Grail.
I didn't watch that.
Oh,
I've been watching a bunch of black and white movies, a couple every now and then, because I kind of got, and we may do this for an episode, I kind of got on a bit of a Cagney hype. Been watching a bunch of James Cagney movies, the old, and a bunch of do you know what the Hays Code is? So the Hays Code is basically didn't let like violence and a bunch of things into films for a long time.
Yep.
It was like in the late 30s all the way into like the 60s, I think the 60s, 50s. So Yeah, so I've watched a bunch of pre-Hays Code movies, and I came across James Cagney's a couple months ago. I watched his Public Enemy movie,
Okay.
which they remade into a terrible movie of Johnny Depp. Like,
Mm.
that movie is boring as fuck. And the original Public Enemy is like, you watch it and you're like, oh, Goodfellas took this, Godfather took, like, you can see so much of what they took and what they sort of took inspiration from. It's a really good performance. It's not like, it's not bloody or violent or anything. It's like, I'd actually say Scarface, the original one, is way more bloody.
Mm.
But it's got some violence. There's a really good scene with a guy getting killed, and they move the camera across, and you hear a guy playing the piano, and then you just hear him suddenly and fall on the piano, and you just see a smirk on one of the guy's face, and them walking, and it's really disturbing, even though it's kind of a censored thing, but it still
Oh my
works.
God.
So I watched that. I watched White Heat. I watched a couple of his movies, but I recently, I don't know why, I felt like watching a horror movie, and for some reason I've decided to watch it at Easter. So I rewatched Night of the Living Dead, the original black and white one,
Nice.
because I have seen a couple of the old Romero movies,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really like Day of the Dead because of the effects.
Yeah,
Because I actually think the color in it is a kind of a hindrance on, like, it makes the effects look worse. It's the one where they're stuck in a mall.
Yeah.
And it looks alright, but everybody's kind of got blue makeup, and the blood looks kind
Oh,
of...
you mean the old
Yeah,
Day of the Dead?
yeah.
Oh.
Not the remake, the 70s one.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I was getting a little confused.
Because
like,
I
wait,
watched
what?
Night of the Living Dead, which is the 1968 one, not the
Yeah.
1991.
Yeah.
Which is in
Oh, I
colour.
knew
Yeah.
you were talking about the old Night of the Living Dead, but then when you were talking about Day of the Dead, I was
No.
like, wait, that doesn't
No,
sound right.
I watched
Oh no, it's the old one.
It's the old one. I've only seen that. I guess I've seen both. And they both have things I like. But
Yeah.
the 70s one isn't bad. I just don't like some of the effects. I just don't think some of the effects hold up that well. But the effects in the 68 one hold up really well because since you have black and white, you can't see like some of the areas where the
Yeah.
makeup would look a little bit tacky or blue or
Yeah.
would look a bit off. So it actually looks really good, and it's really disturbing in some ways because you're watching a movie in black and white and you're really not expecting there to be any blood or any gore or anything, and there is.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's good for that aspect.
There are some exceptions to a
There
movie
are.
of these periods, and if we even I mean, if we look
But
at
it's
the
very
period,
rare, and that's why
Yeah.
it's kind of shocking.
but I do think at least the gory effects in the Evil Dead in 1978 was pretty good.
Yeah, but I'm talking black and white.
Oh, black and white.
I'm
okay.
talking like if I see violence in a movie that's got color, it doesn't surprise me.
No, okay.
Black and white movies, with the exception of maybe some European movies and so a couple movies here and there that were made in the States that maybe had some like violence and blood that got banned.
Oh,
But
yeah.
most of them didn't. This is one of the few ones that did, and it's kind of shocking for its time to see it.
True enough.
And it had a lot of things that were revolutionary for its time. The protagonists are really smart in the movie. You know, like the girl doesn't. The girl like is being chased, and she gets the fuck out of there. And then she's stuck in a car, like she's like crashed the car, and she doesn't just be like, "Oh no, I'm gonna panic and stay in the car." No, she gets the fuck out of the car and runs, and then goes in the house. And then as soon as she's in the house, looks for a knife. I'm like, "Oh, this is a smart movie." I mean, she does panic later on, but I don't blame her. Like after everything that happened, it totally makes sense. And
I guess the adrenaline kind of went down.
and she's went into a state of panic. And
yeah.
there is one point where it's kind of annoying because she panics the second time, and it's like, bitch, you wouldn't be panicking. This guy's trying to help. Like,
Yeah.
he's calm, but he's also the smartest. I'm talking about the black guy in the movie who I wish I could remember his name. I can remember the name of the actor, but not the character. Because I think his name's Dwayne Jones who plays him. Really good performance. Like he's one of the actors who I was watching. I was like, I almost forgot I was watching a black and white movie because it was such a good performance. I wasn't expecting an African American lead because you don't see a lot of them in black and white movies. Which, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they actually, when you have like a African American person in black and white, I think they actually look a little bit better than some of the white people because you can do more with shadowing and more with lighting and other things that, like, makeup and stuff. I was like, Jesus, bloody racism stopped some great actors and film was looking great around this time period.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows the infamous ending where he basically, he gets shot and he's not even a zombie or anything. He's just like looking out and they think he's a zombie. They don't even like check to see if he's a zombie or anything. They just like see someone peep through the window and they're like, oh, must be a zombie. Boom, dead, And I was like, yeah, that's totally probably what would happen in this day and age as well. So
Probably.
So yeah, I watched that. It was very good. Holds up very well. But the main thing I should probably get to before we get into the podcast, I should probably talk about why I wasn't here last week. I won't get too much into it, but basically I had a bit of an accident. Don't know if I want to exactly say what happened, but I had a bit of let's just say I had a bit of an anxiety problem, and I had a fall, and so I had to check into the hospital, and so I had to stay overnight. And Chung thankfully filled in for me, and Erik did a video, and we were going to do a snatcher video, but obviously, that couldn't happen. So I'm all good. I'm all fine. And yeah, I've had a good week this week. I also went to a house party. There was a lot of fun this week. So I saw a really good jazz band, hanged out with my cousin, talked with some cool people and stuff. But yeah, I'm all good. Nothing to worry about. I'm not wearing any bandages or anything more. It's just the first sort of week. So nothing to really worry about. We'll be sort of keeping up with the schedule. I'm starting a new job soon though, so that might mean you might get another magic episode or something like that. Just letting you guys know.
Might branch out to other gaming.
We're gonna see if we can. We will keep up with the Snatcher Let's Play, and we will keep up with the podcast stuff. But there may be times where I may not be able to make it. The show is called Alternating with Erik. It's not called Alternating with Connor. So, if I can't make it, we can always get someone else to come in and alternate with Erik.
No.
And with that goofy transition, let's take a break.
All right.
Communism is not supposed to reproduce the stupidities of capitalism. Yeah, Engels and I spoke of a dictatorship of the proletariat, but not the dictatorship of a party or a central committee, not the dictatorship of one man, but a temporary dictatorship of the working class. The mass of the people will take over the state and govern in the interest of all, until such time as the state itself becomes unnecessary and gradually disappears.
There it go.
We are back from the break, and we are here to talk about Animal Farm. We're going to talk a little bit about the book. We're going to talk a little bit about the 1954 movie. And Erik is going to give us a little bit of a summary of what the story of Animal Farm is about.
So the story of Animal Farm by George Orwell was written in 1945. And the book is centered around a farm called... what is it? Just Manor Farm.
Jones Farm, we could call it.
Jones Farm. That's right, Jones Farm. Jones Farm. And in Jones Farm, it's all run by this, I guess, as the book describes him, a useless drunk of a farmer who takes care of a multitude of animals.
Sorry, I just realized something
Good.
with the name. We called it Jones Farm, and I instantly just thought of the cult leader, Jonestown, Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that he drinks and a lot of the stuff, it's an interesting. But anyways, you keep talking about the plot.
Let's just remember that all that happened way after.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so the plot of this follows that the animals all gather one day to discuss what they're going to do with their lives because. As we are told by George Orwell, the farm is in a state of disarray. The owner Farmer Jones himself is just a complete bastard,
Yeah.
and he doesn't take care of the animals well. He just uses them for
He
the
had a bit of a
production.
financial problem, I believe they describe in the book, and that's led to him sort of taking it out
Essentially.
on the animals.
Yeah, essentially. And so the animals all gather in a barn one night to discuss what might happen. And this is where we get the introduction to a lot of the characters. So there are a lot of important characters in this, but some of the more memorable ones I have were Jones himself, Old Major, who is an elderly pig, there, Snowball and Napoleon and Squealer, all three are pigs as well. So a majority of the story will center around the pigs themselves. Then there's Boxer and Clover, the best characters I think in the
donkey
book.
and the horse.
The donkey and the horse. That's right. There is the sheep. There are the chickens.
Yep.
There is an old raven called Moses. There is there are
a
couple
cat,
of dogs.
but it's never named.
There's a cat, and I've never actually known the purpose of the cat. But anyway, there's also a couple of dogs. There as well. I think one of them named Bluebill.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a multitude of characters here. There's even other characters along the way, but they're more but they're human characters, and they serve some purpose
and
in the
they're
story.
different
but
between the book and the film.
essentially, yes. And so how it all follows is that the animals all decide that they need to actually do something to change, and so in doing so, inadvertently they had to chase Jones out from the farm and eventually take over the farm themselves. Along the way, they all go through quite a lot of issues managing the farm. One of which being that Napoleon, who was described in the book as I guess a bit of a headstrong character.
I think you can talk about generally the what happens. You can actually say like that. There's they come up with a set of rules. You can get into that. People know. I think the gist of that. So.
The gist of it was that the animals, once they changed Jones out, decided to create their own society with its own set of rules, including also how to farm, how to work the fields themselves, how to produce more food for themselves, and follow those set of rules to make sure that everything works. Along the way, they've also decided to enter Jones's house to look at all of his items and what he does, and declare that everything in Jones's house must be destroyed as it is a reminder of him. So this is especially a great scene, I think, in the movie, but in the book, it's just them described as putting everything together and burning it all. Following on from that, as I've described before, the animals try to work the farm and run it as much as they can.
But there's some issues. There's some corruption, isn't there?
Yeah. So they struggle, and Snowball himself has realized he needs to find a way to make it work. And when he did try, it turned out Napoleon, the other pig that had been, I guess, because a lot of the pigs there were all students of Old Major and who followed his words by the letter, quite loyal to him. Napoleon decided he wanted to take a different route and chased Snowball out of the farm. He did this by having previously taken some puppies whose mother was killed during a attempted retake of the farm.
Because is it the same in the book? I don't remember it being the same in the book. I don't remember the dog dying in the book. I think
It's in the book. It's in the book.
Okay, I thought that was more of a film thing.
No, it's in the book. In the book, the mother, I guess the mother or the No, hang on. You're right.
Yeah,
in the book,
because
the movie,
there's actually
the dog dies.
Even though the book is more bleak, there's actually less death in the book.
Yeah, in the book, the parents live, but Napoleon takes the puppies.
Yeah.
And he had trained these puppies to be these vicious bloodhounds for him. And so he got these bloodhounds to chase Snowball out.
Yep.
I can't remember in the book if Snowball was killed,
Or
but...
not. We'll get into that a little bit.
But in any case, following on from that, Napoleon has now taken over. And so first thing Napoleon did was take all the ideas Snowball had and made it his own.
Yeah.
Just so he can consolidate his power over the farm.
Yeah.
And it follows on that he is consolidating more and more his power by taking more and more land over and trying to increase production, but at the same time have more of the luxury and benefits for himself and the other pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I won't spoil the entire plot.
Yeah.
But eventually it ends with a massive fight between Napoleon and his party.
That
and other
is
pigs.
different
Yeah,
between the book and the
Yeah,
film, but
pretty
we'll,
much.
we'll get into a bit of that.
essentially.
Um,
Obviously, Animal Farm, as everybody could already guess, and I read this book and we did a case study on this book back in intermediate school.
so I
This is
never
why
did
this
that.
is one of my favorites because we got into so much in-depth writing and trying to study into this book when I was in intermediate that it became one of my favorites. And so
Was this in Russia or was this here?
this was here.
Oh,
This was
okay,
here. I
okay.
literally had one of the best classes.
Because I picked this because Eric is Russian.
You
And
picked the greatest topic for me to talk about.
There is an obvious underline that we haven't even gotten into of communism that I will let Eric get into later on.
And then that's the obvious factor of Animal Farm. Animal Farm is based off of is a representation of the Soviet Union before, during the rule of the Tsars, to afterwards, towards the end of World War II.
Yeah.
Obviously, the book stops. Because the book was published in 1945, it stops at the end of World War II. So George Orwell may not have been able to write a funny anecdote about Stalin's death in the 1950s.
Maybe he included that in 1984 or some of his other later writings. I don't know.
No, even I wouldn't think he'd go that far. But
He's not exactly a comedian when it comes to writing as well. So.
But I think even he would have managed something considering Stalin's death and that. But anyway, obviously, with Animal Farm being a representation of the history of Russia in the Second World War, there's already a lot of factors you can see and a lot of similarities. The one being, of course, Jones's Farm. Jones's Farm has the name changed to Animal Farm. This is obviously Russia changing to the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republic. And some of the other cool things I thought that they included was the not only kind of the takeover of the farm by all the animals, but also the fact that characters like Snowball had decided to re-educate everyone, and that is generally what happened. Just going back to the characters, so. The characters themselves are represented by Jones being the Russian royal family, the Tsars. Old Major
for those who want to hear more about, I just want to put a little promotion. For those who want to hear a little bit more about the Russian family, we briefly touched on this a little bit when we talked about Rasputin. Because Rasputin played a little bit, we talked about him, and I think you can find our episode. It's like Rasputin wins the game or something. In that episode, we talked a little bit about the Tsar of the family, because he was obviously kind of their doctor, kind of not, kind of like a magic sort of, for the Tsar. And they, of course, as we talked about, they got killed off, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Jones. The last emperor of Russia was Tsar Nicholas II, and it was him, his wife, his 3 daughters. And that's pretty much it. Any other remaining family members were also killed off or exiled from Russia. And so, what happened to Jones was definitely a lot less bloody in the book than what happened in real life.
Yep.
And Old Major represents Karl Marx, the father of communism, which made a lot of sense because aspects of Old Major's speech while they were in the barn reflected a lot of the ideals that Karl Marx had for what communism would be like, which included unity for all and just the aspect of understanding that we are not unequal. We are all equal. We should think of ourselves as brothers and sisters, and we must also help each other, share with one another. Which wasn't a bad idea.
Yeah.
But communism in a sort of economic
Became more
aspect,
diluted as it sort of went
and
on.
in an economic aspect, it really depended. But most of the time, communism may not have worked.
Yep.
Snowball was represented as Lenin, but I also think it's an extension of Lenin and the much more puristic ideals he had for Russia, the more puristic plans he had for Russia. So included in there, I think Snowball also would represent Trotsky, because even after Lenin died, in the book and the movie, Snowball was still there. So I would think Snowball isn't a representation of Lenin, but Lenin and his ideals and all the people that still held on to those ideals, such as Trotsky. And obviously, Napoleon is Joseph Stalin, and Napoleon chased out Snowball.
Would you? The one thing I was thinking of actually, since we reviewed at one point Rose of Versailles, I was thinking maybe there's a little bit of Napoleon, from French history, and there may be a bit too. Would you agree with me on that, or would you? I think there's maybe a bit of that in there as well.
I wouldn't think
because he's quite
so.
short as well. He's not the tallest of them, and he's kind of.
I'm not exactly sure, but maybe the reason,
because this is sort of, this probably wasn't what George was going for, but there is a little bit of the French Revolution kind of thing going on there too, where you've got someone that's comes in, Napoleon, and he takes over, and he essentially takes all the wealth and the good for himself and spends everything and gives little to the people around him. And that's kind of like what the royal family in France did as well, when you think about it.
I would think there is some similarities to it. I would always think
because I think the movie at least was leaning a little bit less in the Russian sort of thing and went more for sort of the German and the sort of ideals.
Yeah, that could be the case. But I've never really touched too much upon why Napoleon the pig in Animal Farm would be named that way.
I just think that maybe was one of the reasons.
We'll agree with that one until I can find a counter argument.
Yeah.
But no, that would actually make a lot of sense considering. Considering what it is. There's also Squealer, who was the right hand of Napoleon. That's a bit of a funny one because at first I thought Squealer was going to be Trotsky.
Yeah,
but
now
his actions.
Sorry, just because I'm trying to remember my Russian history on this. Is he the bald dude, the famous bald dude that kidnapped women and stuff that worked for Stalin? Do you know who I'm talking about? So there was a bald guy.
Trotsky.
Yeah.
No, Trotsky was
Because there was someone that kidnapped women and did horrible things and stuff.
No. That's definitely someone else. Okay. I think it's one of the two people I'm about to name. For Squealer. So Squealer, I think, is a representation of Stalin's supporters, the people who are his whistleblowers and his own larger voice. But I think the two individuals I came up with that might have a close representation of Squealer are Georgy Melon. Oh, I can't even read my own bloody
You're
writing.
Russian.
Georgy Malenkov or Nikolai Yeznov. So Malenkov was a how do I describe his job? He was a kind of a teller in the Soviet Party in the Bolsheviks. Even before Stalin took over, he had the list of every member of the Soviet Party on him. You know. So he's one of the people who helped Stalin during the Great Purge, which is basically kick Trotsky out, kill everyone who doesn't agree with Stalin. And it was I think that's one of them. So I think I saw one site describe him as Stalin's errand boy. Now the other name, Nikolai Yeznov, that should be quite a familiar name to know if you've done Russian history, which Connor doesn't look like he's done it. And
I'm double checking something.
He's looking it up. But let me quickly describe. Nikolai Yaznov was Stalin was also Stalin's closest was the closest worker, and he was one of the first heads of the NKVD, or the old KGB of Russia, the secret police.
Oh, I know them.
Yeah. But yeah, that was so that's who Squealer represented. The other was the mayor Molly. So I can't exactly remember who Molly might have represented, but my guess would be the high class, the individuals who were more or less supportive, of the of the old czardom, and the ones who were used to living in luxury and stepping on the poor people.
Now that was who I was thinking of for Napoleon's associate, but I'm probably wrong on that. I don't know. Sorry, I pulled up one of Stalin's associates. Brera, but I'm probably wrong on that one.
Maybe, because these are the two names that stood out to me the most. Because one person helped Stalin with purging the Soviet Party of anyone who didn't support Stalin. The other guy was head of the secret police. Like, seriously, who else do you want to have as your squealer?
Yeah.
And
I think more people are going to be more familiar with the KGB because of shows like Chernobyl, which really highlighted the fact that the KGB actually covered up and hid a lot of the stuff about what was happening in Chernobyl and tried to get rid of certain people that were going against what they were trying to sort of cover up. So.
Pretty much. Now, the other few characters I'll quickly run through are Boxer and Clover, aka the workers.
Yeah.
The people who...
Do they represent anyone from history? Any rebels or anyone who is sort of...
No, Boxer and Clover are literally... Actually, so here's where I think, if I remember correctly, Boxer represented the general workers, the worker class.
Yeah.
The people who basically were... the backbone of the Russian economy and the Russian industry back then. Clover represented the same, but I think Clover was a group that was far more outspoken later on when they realized, what was going on. I think they're also supposed to represent the proletariat, which is higher up than the workers.
Okay.
But that's only because they were in much more specialized
They
industries.
weren't representing like a marginalized group that was maybe trying to rebel and then got taken down or any...
But that's only...
That's what I was thinking maybe with the donkey.
Yes, but that's actually being more represented later on in the book.
Okay.
The other two are sheep, which is the general public, which is like, well, I mean, okay.
That's the most obvious reference in the whole book to like...
Orwell could not have made this more obvious.
Yeah.
You'd say it's lazy, but even George Orwell thought, this is like...
And
even a 5-year-old would know.
I don't know if there's one part that's in the book, and it's sort of touched on in the movie a little bit as well, of them just repeatedly saying one of the phrases...
4 legs good.
4 legs
2
good.
legs bad.
Yeah.
That was the best.
But you get what I mean, though. That is kind of like the sheep, the following, the message, the continued repetition to get it stuck in their head, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And then finally, actually 2 more animals. So one was Moses the Raven, who for every obvious indication in the world is Rasputin.
Yeah.
Because he's been described in this book. Yes, because
Okay.
he's been described in the book as a character hated by all the other animals because he would
That's an interesting way of looking at him now that I think about it.
Yeah, because he had close ties with Jones and would always speak to him about things that happened in Russia, as well as having the support of parts of the general public or some of the higher class of animals by telling them that stuff like when you die you will go to a beautiful place called Sugar Candy Mountain.
Okay.
I'll let you have a read of
see, I'm just thinking of the movie now, and I'm thinking because I don't think this was as touched on in the movie.
No, it wasn't.
Because in the movie there's a lot more death, weirdly enough, even though the movie I'd say is less bleak. But Moses is like portrayed as he's a crow, as you said, and crows are usually a signifier of death.
No, raven.
Oh, raven. Same thing, signifier of death. They're not really signified of anything good. And when you see him and you see him looking at like the death, you're expecting him to laugh or to like swoop down and eat the corpse, do what they usually do. But instead, he is shocked. And I thought that was really interesting. And you saying Rasputin makes it even more interesting because he's this black, dark figure that's kind of a little bit frightening looking. But is still kind of a positive and a real person, kind of like Rasputin, who was like this kind of shocking, kind of terrifying looking person that they kind of made out to be kind of like a dark wizard sort of thing, but was actually and was actually a bit of a swindler, but was also maybe kind of a bit of a nice person as well.
Sure enough. But anyway, and the last of the animals are, of course, the other general animals, which included the chickens, the cows. The hens, the cows, the ducks, and a lot of these other animals. These represented the a mix of the general public and the workers, or rather, the farmers and the providers. So these are the people that were heavily dependent on by the Bolshevik Party to provide them with the supplies needed to run the country, and even in the movie and the book, there were some dark things that happened to them when they started disagreeing with
I've got
the Bolshevik Party.
I've got a big. There's one of my cons I'm going to get into later on that they do in the movie that wasn't in the book, and it didn't really make much sense why. But we'll get into that later on.
But basically, this is the summarized plot and an outline of some of the characters that I thought were most important in this book. There are other characters later on introduced into this, including
other
animals, other farmers, other townsfolk, other animals as well from other farms that joined and they themselves had a sort of hand and a position of power or some position in an animal farm. But for most of the part, the humans weren't exactly looked at or well liked. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I think we'll move on. And actually, going from the plot,
talk a little bit about George Orwell.
Yeah, going from the plot to the man himself.
Yeah. So George Orwell, who wrote this, his name. So Eric's gonna find this funny. His original name is Erik Arthur Blair. And he is a British Indian novelist. Now, the reason I say that is because he technically is Indian, because he was born in the Indian Republic, obviously when Britain invaded India and they had, territories in India. So he was born there and he was mostly raised in there. And he, I believe he had also done like some travel around Burma and some other areas around there. And he was an outspoken Democrat socialist and a little bit of the reason he done so much travel is also because he was a bit of a soldier. And that's mostly what I've got on him. There's so much stuff you could touch on just, we could do a separate podcast just on George Orwell. I'm not kidding. There's so much stuff on him.
Yeah,
because he also wrote 1984, which also has some sort of similar
which is probably
messages to this.
More famous than Animal Farm because of how much of a bleak.
I think mostly because of the movie for that one. I think the book got very famous, but the movie made it even more.
Fair
because
enough.
it, funnily enough, came out in the 80s as well, if I remember correctly. So, and it's a very famous English movie, so it doesn't surprise me that got some obviously love. But yeah, that's mostly what I have on George Orwell. And I found it interesting that he had done some travel Burma because I would actually talk about the relevancy of this book. I don't want to get too political here, but there is a bit of a situation, as probably Eric's seen and I've seen, over in Burma and what's been happening with, I'm going to butcher a name, Aung San Suu Kyi, I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yeah. There's a bit of a situation with her going on, and it's a little bit similar to this. You could sort of look at that, except instead of having would you say that the Russian government, that's the Russian government, but was there a bit of a military sort of thing as well? The military sort of doing an uprising, kind of like with Burma? Because that's what we're kind of seeing. We're seeing less of a government, more of a military. But you would say it's sort of similar,
Thing
isn't
is,
it? Where it's,
I wouldn't say so.
but there is a censorship.
but-
There is a censorship of a military coming in, saying, no, you can't have your democracy. We're coming in. We're having our laws. We're not having religion. We're not
And
having
here's
this.
where the similarities already start dropping, because one thing. Let me just say this real quickly, because the difference between that and the revolutions that have happened in Russia is that this wasn't a military takeover. This was a people's takeover.
Okay.
So the military was all controlled by the emperor at the time. I don't want to say the government, because and thus.
Okay,
the
so this
workers
would be more
themselves,
similar to the French Revolution, I guess, than the Burma case, maybe.
I would say in terms of similarities, this is more like the situation in Burma. I would say is more.
I'm just trying to think
yeah.
of. I was trying to think of ways how this would be relevant, and that was like the closest thing I could sort of.
I would
think of
say
what
just
would
think
be.
of any other situation where a military would take over a government, which follows a democratic process, and then there you go. Because unfortunately, that's what there's not a lot of similarities with what's happening in Burma to, I guess, what we're discussing now. But I can see where you're coming from. But
Yeah, I just thought the takeover and the way
Yeah,
things
yeah.
are pushing, and you have two leaders, kind of like what we have here. You know,
Yeah.
you have Aung, she is kind of like, you could look at her as the snowball type
Mm.
leader in here, who has some of the values from the past Burmese sort of, because her father was a famous sort of leader.
Yeah,
And then, that leader was taken out, and then she sort of tried to come in, and then you have this other force that kind of is like the Napoleon sort of force coming in, that is just trying to take it out, whatever's in their way, and is, trying to oppress and just have what they need and not what everybody else needs.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's just how I sort of look at it.
Yeah. There's massive amounts of differences, but some aspects.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Just some. I was thinking of how this is relevant, and I was thinking maybe like some of the aspects of what we're seeing now in Burma and what's going on there. Sadly, is kind of similar in some ways to some of the takeover aspects and from the book. But while we're on the topic of like government and that sort of thing, the movie that we've sort of briefly touched on, and maybe we'll talk about a bit of pros and cons and differences and stuff. That movie was produced by the CIA. I don't know if you do that. The movie,
cartoon itself.
Yeah, the cartoon itself was produced by the CIA,
I did not know
and
that.
it is actually, if you look it up on Wikipedia, it is called a propaganda movie. It is
Oh,
called
wow.
a British American propaganda animated movie. Because it is sort of very. It's, I don't know if you noticed this, but there is a little bit of the Russian thing in there, but it feels like there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of the German Nazis sort of
True.
similarities. They're trying to go for a bit more in there, and I don't know if that's just a thing that they maybe couldn't put Russian stuff in an American British movie, or maybe they thought it would be more relevant to have the German aspects. I don't
yeah.
know. What's your opinion on that?
Just kind of looking at the movie quite briefly, and it's a massive surprise to hear that it was made by the CIA. But now that I'm starting to see it, there are some I guess aspects in terms of the positioning, as well as sort of some elements in the movie, including how Napoleon himself is portrayed.
Yeah.
It's almost like Stalin, but at the same time, you could also say the same
saw
as
elements of Hitler. in
yeah,
there
as
well.
Hitler as well, which makes me think, you're actually right. There are some aspects of this movie that are close to.
I mean, I know Joseph Stalin and Hitler had some similar, not tactics, but they both had the fences. They both had the kind of uniforms, like were a little bit similar sometimes.
Their methods
Obviously
of
more black with the Nazis.
their methods of dictatorship were very similar. Although Stalin has been recorded as having more lives killed under his rule than Hitler did.
Yep.
Like, even if you include all the soldiers of the Wehrmacht, the Waffen-SS, all the lives lost in the concentration camps, Stalin has somehow managed to beat that record himself.
Yeah.
Which is a terrifying thought if you think about it, but at the same time, Germany, Germany
Yeah.
versus the Soviet Union. It's a
Yeah.
larger space and more
I
people.
mean, the biggest thing for me, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but the biggest thing for me that made me think this was more Germanic than sort of Russian was the dogs. The dogs, the way they're portrayed and the way they look visually gave me more of the Nazi Germany sort of vibe because they're black.
Fair enough.
They're completely black, kind of like the Nazi SS. And they do
The
this.
Gestapo.
Yeah, the Gestapo. And they do this very creepy but very cool thing that I really liked where they have them come out. You have them walk, and then they walk into their shadows, and you just see the eyes and the teeth as they walk into the shadows. I thought it was really cool. And that kind of gave it like that pack mentality, all sort of joining like a soldier or like an army sort of thing, all striking at one opponent. So this movie in general, just to talk about some of the visuals, maybe Erik will agree with me on this. I think it's a very American
definitely
looking movie, even though it has aspects of like, which was one of my sort of issues. It has the British painted sort of backgrounds, like very British sort of painted backgrounds. But then the art style is very much like sort of Bambi, very much Pinocchio. I would 100% this was like, so whoever drew this was looking at like Pinocchio and Bambi at the time, especially with some of the human characters. I mean, the human characters are so ugly that sometimes they even look a bit like sort of Ren and Stimpy kind of characters.
It is seem to be a British staple in a British staple of British cartoons,
It is, but
right?
British. There's definitely a very
The way they portray human characters does seem to be sometimes rather terrifying when it comes to
ugly
being a
and
villain.
garish sometimes. Even when they're meant to be sort of nice people, they can look a bit more ugly.
Yeah.
But that's where I think the British storytelling aspects maybe come in that maybe are affecting the American storytelling. But I do feel like the art style is very much the American sort of Bambi, Pinocchio kind of art style. With
a Walt Disney sort of.
Yeah, very much
theme.
Disney influence, like the 30s and 40s sort of Disney style.
Hey, if the CIA want anyone to make their cartoons for them, Walt Disney's their man.
They didn't. I don't think they get. This is a Disney movie, though, if I remember correctly. This is a British American thing. So this may have been British animators trying to, sort of do an American sort of style. I just that's one of the things I noticed. I noticed the film score. We talk about American as well. This is a very. I got very much a feel of like a Western. And I know when you think of Western, you're probably thinking of Morricone. You're probably thinking of like the Clint Eastwood sort of Westerns. I was thinking more of the John Ford type sort of John Wayne Westerns that are very much Americana, patriotism sort of thing. The score is very much like that. It's a lot of strings and a bit of a couple horns every now and then. In there as well, and it's very much a 50s.
And none of it is quiet. It's all struck sharp and loud.
There's a couple moments where it gets a bit creepy, and there's a couple moments that are actually it didn't take me out, but I was like, oh, that's different. It's different from the rest of the score because the rest of the score is so very much like a 50s kind of John Wayne sort of Western type.
And it does attach itself more to scenes where it involves Napoleon and his dogs.
I mean, I noticed a very soft, sort of sad string music sometimes being used here and there.
Pretty much.
But you were gonna add to that.
Oh no! I was gonna add something funny to it, but I decided not to. But yeah.
Yeah, I've got some notes on the sound design as well that I was briefly gonna talk about. So
can we talk a little bit more about the in-depth of Animal Farm, or should we do it after that?
We'll get into I'll talk about some of the disturbing elements of the sound design, and you can get into how. That's, and you've probably got something on your notes about that.
I got a few things, but not too much.
So, because we can talk about how the sound is used for storytelling. And as we're saying, we're mostly talking about the movie here, obviously, not the book. The book obviously has like narration for the whole thing, and for some reason they did this for the movie as well. And there's good things and there's bad things about that. One thing I was not big on was the fact that all the animals sing and they just sing in their own language, and it sounds kind of annoying to me.
Actually, no. Here's the fun thing about the way they sing. So the
I was not a big fan of it. I found it kind of annoying.
The song they were singing was actually a revised version that George Orwell created called "The Beasts of England."
Oh no, I know the song, but I mean in the movie, it's just random animal noises, and
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
kind of annoying. I thought.
I was trying to figure out which song they might have been singing themselves,
Yeah.
and looking at the Beast of England. Take a wild guess at which song they sing. Don't look it up. Don't even think about it.
I'm not
Don't-
looking it up.
Good. Guess which song they sing. I'm not sure if you actually heard of this song, but take a wild guess at which
Is it an
song.
American song?
No,
Is it a British song?
no.
Is it a Russian song?
Mm-mm.
No, okay, I don't know what it is.
It is a French proletariat workers song
Oh, see, I would've
made
never got that.
by a guy called Eugene Potier, called L'International.
Yeah,
Okay, and I'll give you a listen of it, or if you want, we can listen to it now.
we can listen
But-
to it later on.
Okay, but it is an old song made, I think, sometime in 1914, and it was made I think pre-World War One era, but used by the Bolshevik Party, in its early stages,
Yeah,
to the 1940s, as sort of a workers' anthem song.
mm-hmm.
And when you listen to it, Russian or English, it is such a great song. But you can also see that some of its lyrics are very similar to the Beast of
Yeah.
England sung in Animal Farm.
Yeah.
And even the way they sing it in the movie, there are some similar tones and rhythms
Yeah.
to the original Les International song. But I'll give you a listen of it, and you can tell me what you think.
Yeah.
But I found that to be a very interesting aspect of the song itself.
I just found in the I listened to an audiobook version of the book, and so I got to hear a little bit of the song being sort of sung,
Yeah.
and it was a little bit more standable hearing it but just hearing it in the movie, which is like just like random animal noises all layered over, and they're not really. They really just don't mix very well together, like sound wise for me.
You'd have to really hear it to find it. But
I just found that a bit. I sort of got what they're doing, but I couldn't help but be a bit distracted by
it was quite disconcerting.
because the sound
sometimes.
design in general. So there are like some sounds that are heightened at the start of the movie that are kind of invasive and a bit unsettling. Like there's a couple door slams and doors creaking and things like that as the farmer Jones goes through the farm, and we see Boxer and his friend like slowly peeping out of their door, and you hear a little bit of a creak. They sort of emphasize things like that. But I noticed later on in the movie, there's times where they don't use any sound design at all in a couple places. Like there's a scene where a certain character dies and a rock falls on them. And all the moments before, like you don't really hear a rope snap as much. All of that sort of is toned down a lot. And instead it's the visual of the facial reactions and of the other character witnessing this is more focused on. And there's good aspects of that, bad. I didn't mind it. I thought it was okay. But I really liked in this movie, there's one sort of aspect that's not in the book at all. There's way more death in this. And there's one death in this where the dogs are chasing down one of the characters. And we see Moses looking at this, and we hear all the sound design for it. We hear all the you can even hear like a little bit of the running. You can hear a little bit of something maybe being ripped or taken, and then you just hear sort of the screams and the eating. And so that was really unsettling and well done. There was one character that I didn't think needed to die, to be honest. Like they just killed a cat. I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil that, but in the movie they killed a cat, and I was like, why? I
no
also
idea.
kind of didn't get why he sort of was in line with the ducks, but they do a better job of sort of explaining that in the book than they do in the movie. But to get more onto the more disturbing other themes that might be in the book, Eric, why don't you tell us about some of the other themes that are in there?
So there are definitely a lot of disturbing themes in the book itself. I've mostly been touching on the much lighter ideals because those are the ideals that were supposed to be the better representations of the Soviet Union. That being the re-education that Snowball introduced and the new ideals. So things like building a windmill in order to provide electricity for the entire farm.
Wasn't that a Napoleon idea?
No. It was a Snowball
I think
idea.
in the movie they give that to Napoleon. And
Yeah,
in the
after
book, they give that to
after he
Snowball.
kills Snowball,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I think they changed some of the ideas and switched
yeah.
them around in places.
Essentially, it was and it is a massive reflection of the history of the Soviet Union. A lot of the ideals Stalin had implemented into Russia was originally Lenin's and Trotsky's, but he perversed them and twisted them so much. We can pretty much see what happened. The re-education that was made after the Russian royal family was killed, and not only that, the Bolsheviks themselves had at this point, and this is where it takes a much darker turn, because in the book and movie, the animals all gathered up items and any other reminders of Jones they had and burned it. That represents, that's really a metaphor for the Bolshevik Party destroying anything of the old Russia that was around, because they didn't want anything to do with
And
the
that
old
includes
Tsardom.
people as well, isn't it?
Exactly.
Similar
So,
to what Pol Pot did and some other communist parties around sort of that time.
more or less. So this included also the destruction of the state religion, Russian Orthodoxy.
That's what I was meaning when I meant Pol Pot and some of those other
And
communist
so
dictators.
essentially, yeah. And another slight darker aspect, not as bad as before, but in the beginning, when Snowball was trying to convince some of the animals to follow him so that he can lead revolution or changes to Russia, some animals disagreed with him and stated that they had support for Jones because Jones takes care of them and feeds them. What this reflects in a real life situation was people called the Black Hundreds. So these were the mass supporters of the Tsar and the entire Russian royal family, and these were people who would go around dressed in black, hang up black signs, and simply just state their support for the royal family. Obviously, Black Hundreds paying that, all that. And yeah, and what's another? Oh, guess I got him. I guess I got another couple of dark ones, which was Napoleon taking the puppies.
Yeah.
So what this is supposed to represent was.
So I just want to touch on the one difference that we probably should with the book and the movie, which is in the movie, as we talked about, the dog dies and Napoleon essentially comes in and pretends to sort of be their father and
the surrogate
raise them.
parent.
But what's more disturbing, I thought, in the book is he actually just kidnaps the puppies and just says, "No, they're my kids now."
Yeah. So this is supposed to represent Napoleon taking in some young, I guess some young folk under his wing and molds them into his.
Which I thought the
secret
movie was going
soldiers.
for kind of a Hitler Youth thing, as I said, like the Nazi sort of Gestapo thing, and probably the book's more going for the Russia sort of version of
and
that.
then there's that sort of similarity to Hitler's and Stalin's methods of controlling the population and controlling what people say and what they do. But yeah, that's one representation. The other one was I think I could be wrong about how this is represented or how this is timed, but the initial takeover of the animals versus the attempted second takeover by Jones.
Yeah.
So in the first aspect where Jones has to run away, I believe this is actually centered around the event called Bloody Sunday, which entails.
You're still talking about Russian politics here, not Irish IRA thing.
No,
There's
no,
also
no, no.
a thing like that in
No.
Irish.
No. In Russia, there was an event called Bloody Sunday.
Okay.
And in this event, a priest, I forgot to get his name, came to the Tsar's palace with hundreds of other people, with a petition to say, "We want change. Here's how many people have agreed we need change," because they're all sick and tired of it all. And in this, all the people came. They all came. It was a peaceful protest. That's what it was. And in response, the Tsar asked his royal guard to take up their guns and then start shooting. The priest and tens of people had died. So I believe the initial takeover, that was a representation. And this was Jones not necessarily giving the farm back, but running away and just running away and having to have other people deal with that sort of problem.
Yeah.
A bit of not too close, but I feel this is the closest representation of it. And then the second
You could almost make a Kaiser Wilhelm sort of comparison there in a way.
Now, I couldn't decide between them because in around the events of Bloody Sunday, there were actually two revolutions: the February and the October Revolution in the 1990s, 1919s. Anyway, I believe this is either one would be a good but I think October Revolution. That's a better representation of the second takeover by Jones, who came with his friends to try and take back the farm.
Yeah.
And by then, I think the Bolshevik Party and Lenin already had such massive support from the people that at that point, in the book and the movie, where the animals just fought back and just took down Jones and his friends. That's reflected in the October Revolution, where the Bolshevik Party finally, broke through the Russian forces that were trying to protect the Tsar, taking the Tsar and just killing him and his family. And yeah, this is this was the much darker aspect. It's a lighter aspect in the book and movie, but
there's less of a rebellion though in the actual book, isn't there? And there's more of a one in the movie, because the movie. The biggest difference between the book and the movie is the movie just ends with Napoleon essentially winning and them all just being in a shitty society.
Pretty much.
And the movie, because I think it's produced by the CIA, was like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And it basically ends with basically them rebelling. And that's where I sort of got the Rose of Versailles theme, because it's kind of like them coming in and, taking out the royal family and, murdering them and
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, similar sort of fashion.
Yeah, this is this was a bit of a hard one for me to remember or point out to, because it because the second it was a bit of a hard one to decide whether or not the second takeover was going to be one of the revolutions. But you are right in sort of how the animals acted towards anyone trying to invade them, and unlike some aspects of how the Bolshevik Party tried to fight back against the Tsars, it was a bit one-sided to the animals in George Orwell's book.
So would that be a pro, or in terms of the ending for the book and the movie, is that a pro or con for you? Do you prefer the book to be sort of end on a more bleak tone and say like,
I think the book's ending is more of a pro, and I think the movie's ending would be a con, because the good thing about the ending of the book is that it still follows historical significance.
Yeah.
The animals finally see at some point where Napoleon was frolicking with the other pigs and the other humans who were there as well.
Yeah.
And they're all sitting around a dinner table eating this nice food, drinking this nice alcohol, and dressed, really nicely.
Yeah.
And when they, start fighting, having these brawls, and the animals are like, yeah, we see no difference to this. That's, I think, a pro, because it is.
Did you catch the major difference in the book with which I thought was more interesting? In the book, the pigs invite the humans over to eat with them, and instead of in the movie, it's just other pigs.
Is that it?
Yeah, that was one of the major differences I noticed, and I thought it was more interesting in the book to have the humans come and sit and drink with them.
I guess it was
because the whole point, I thought, with the movie at least, was trying to show that the pigs are becoming human, basically.
Yeah.
And they're becoming like the bad humans,
in
this case. They're getting corrupted. That was the main thing.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot about that ending.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And yeah, this is I think that would still be a pro for me for the book versus the movie, because yeah,
I think the book generally is weirdly, it has less death, even though it's more bleak, I would say, and the movie is less bleak but has more death in it.
But if there's one thing I'd say about the pros of the movie versus the pro of the book, is that at least we can hear the sheep going, Two legs good,
Just love
four
saying that.
legs bad. Or no,
See,
actually, it was
you need to listen to the audiobook. The audiobook
two
does that too.
legs great, four legs not so good.
Yeah, yeah. That is in the audiobook though. If you listen to
Mm-hmm.
the audiobook, I read this and I looked
Yeah.
at the audiobook as well.
One other thing I will say to this is that one pro I will say to the movie, I think they did really well, is kind of the rule changes that happen throughout. Where
The visual thing of the paint being written in blood, sort of over
because
the white.
in the book they it happens, but you're like, oh, I guess that's so obvious. But in the
Yeah.
movie, it's like so blatant. You're like, really?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a bit of a comedic aspect to it because you're like, come on.
I did think this was kind of sad and well handled, and it did actually remind me a bit of a Disney moment. I do wish they didn't say the Lou Factory in the movie. I wish they had just said nothing. Because it's such a good moment, and the only thing that ruins it is that they say the Lou Factory. But the narrator, says it. But the bit where Boxer goes, because Boxer's had an injury, and there's such a good thing where they don't really tell you what's going on, and they just see a van, and you almost as an audience are like, oh, it's the hospital, the vet, they're gonna come save him, and then you see, you just see the look on his face, you just see how upset he is, like the donkey, his friend. Sorry, what's his name again?
Clover.
Yeah, you just see how sad Clover is, and you just see that look of horrified on his face, and you see him chase after it, and then you see that Boxer knows what's going to happen to him, and you said shit. And I would have liked more if nothing was like, if there was no, because there's a little bit of narration, I believe, like that says that, and there's even a little bit in the. It's a little bit in the book too, and I would have loved if they just left that moment to sort of just sink in, instead you just have afterwards, and he went to the Lou Factory or something, so it really hits home to us.
Let me just tell you the narration of that scene because
the narrator also, sorry, just to touch on this, the narrator is also far too like chipper and positive. Even in the upbeat moments, he's like, Boxer's going to the Lou Factory. I'm like, no, I need the narrator to be a bit more.
And I think here's some of the differences between the movie and the book, because in the movie you say glue factory, but that's an American thing. In the book, it's a meat factory, a meat grinder.
Okay.
And what it actually is,
it's a bit more
what it is,
obvious, but also a bit more,
And what it was that after Boxer had his injury, he was put inside of a. He didn't actually know where he was going. He was just listening to orders.
Oh, jeez, that's even more.
Yeah, that's even worse. So when he gets inside, he does it willingly. Because he gets told, you're going to a doctor, you're going to get fixed, it's fine.
Oh.
But all the animals could see on the side of the carriage he was in, it said meat factory.
Yeah.
And so Clover, his best friend, is going to the animals. That's not a fucking doctor. That's a meat factory.
I did the reason I did like it as well is it kind of reminded me a bit of, the reason why it was so Disney to me is because it kind of reminds me of like, when like Pinocchio goes to the circus and they're all kind of being taken away and they're donkeys and shit. And that definitely was very much going for the Holocaust sort of vibe, with them going in the trains. And I kind of got that vibe from the scene. So it just, to me, I thought was really well done. My only problem literally was like, just take the narrator out of that scene. I mean, there's scenes of this movie where I just wish there wasn't any narration at all, to be honest.
And the other part of that scene was that when the animals were looking to be convinced by what Clover said, which was, guys, he's getting taken to a meat factory. Squealer comes in.
So that was actually a really good moment in the movie where Squealer comes out and you see him visually and like, and you can tell and you're almost like, oh no, they're gonna fall for it again. But then you see the look on their faces. I laughed a little bit just because I was like, fuck yes.
They fell for it in the book because Squealer convinced them that the side of the carriage itself was just recently bought by the doctor, so they hadn't changed the sign from meat factory to doctor.
Yeah.
And somehow everyone was convinced except Clover, who knew that this was bullshit.
So less of a pro or con, but just something I wanted to touch on because we talked about this. One of the things that's definitely in the movie and in the book was them always talking about, like, instead of saying the person's died, it was this person was a traitor. They're a traitor.
Yep.
That's very much something from the Russian sort of.
That is frequently said in the book, and that was frequently the excuse used by Stalin and his party to execute someone. So it was basically, don't worry, he's going to a better place, or he's a traitor, and almost nobody questioned it.
Yeah.
But I mean, how could you? You're the leader of your country has an army, massive army. You're in the middle of a world war. What the hell are you gonna do?
Yeah. So would you? So I did enjoy this, and you obviously enjoyed this. Would you recommend someone watch the movie, or would you recommend
Book.
someone read the book?
Book.
Yeah, I'd recommend
Just
the
the
book
book.
as well.
I'm
Yep.
sorry. As fun as the movie, the cartoon was to watch,
Yeah.
the book is just far more in depth and far darker than the movie ever will be. And kudos to the CIA to at least make the effort.
Sorry,
but even
really
George,
funny saying kudos to the CIA, our
Yeah.
buddies at the CIA.
yeah, kudos to the CIA for at least trying. But
Thanks,
even,
Stan. Love you, buddy.
yeah, but even your movie you made 9 years later couldn't beat a book.
Oh
made in
yeah, there was a really
1945.
shitty movie made a couple. I don't think the CIA produced that. I think that movie
There
had
was
a
there
low
was
budget.
a live action movie made in
It's so
1999.
bad. It's
It
so
was
bad.
terrible.
It's so bad.
I couldn't even get past the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
So we're gonna both recommend the book,
Mm-hmm.
and this has been Alternating with Eric, episode 42. Catch you guys later.
See ya. Good lord, that was fun.
You didn't even wait till I stopped recording.